Oh, wonderful. Hi, friends. I want to welcome you to a wonderful time we're going to have here today with my very good friend. This is Jaya, Jaya amazing, and Jaya the beautiful, the gorgeous, the divine. And, Jaya, to me, you mean um, you're a very deep expression of someone who's embodied the deepest truths of life through the portal of sexuality, opening you up really to the infinite. And so it's such an honor to, have our joy that I have with yourself and Ian, your partner, and the amazing co-relationship we have. So I wanted to share who you are to all my friends, to all our warrior sages. So welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Pleasure is my favorite thing in the world. So I love being here, and thank you so much, Sachin, for who you are and all that you do for the world. And with this entire series of interviews, it's just been amazing, and I feel so honored to be among all of the people that you've interviewed so far.
Well, you have a very powerful, I believe, the most charged topic on the planet that you've dove right down Schrodinger's hole and back, all of his holes and his
Many holes. We could go lots of places with holes.
So I want to start off at the end of sexuality, or in some esoteric traditions, they share about, we love, you share about pleasure. You've been doing it for most of your life. You've been immersed in educating people about every corner of sexuality, from the profane to the most enlightened, and to be able to dissolve all those distinctions and literally come into the ecstasy of continuous pleasure. You crack the code to the point like where my wife and I are studying your work, and we're like, oh my God, they have cracked the code to like dial in exactly how to nuance each other into ecstasy.
I love that. Nuance each other into ecstasy. That was one of my goals, was to not make anything bad wrong, to take out the bad doing, wrongdoing. I love that Rumi quote, like, beyond the wrongdoings and the right doings, there's a field and I'll meet you there. Where all of comprehensive sex, like everything about sex that we could possibly imagine, and my goodness, what humans can come up with in terms of what we like to do sexually, what we play with sexually. And so it was just, how do we create an all-encompassing place? And then where all these people feel like they're different or they're incompatible, how do we then come into union? How do we create oneness through everything from the profane to the sacred? And how does it all become sacred and divine in that? So there's actually no difference between the sacred and the profane. It's all just, here's what I love, and there's no shame and there's no guilt in that. And in that lies ultimate freedom. It's just, this is who I am. It's an ownership of our true essence as erotic beings, beyond all the conditioning and the programming and all the stuff that gets layered with sexuality, and into the truth and into the acceptance of, freedom. This is who I am. And I like to play here and I like to play there. And then, oh my goodness, we all like to play everywhere. I mean, this is, if anything, what I've discovered through the journey with sexuality is that I believe essentially we're all of it. We're all the different colors and all the different desires of sexuality. Once we peel back all the conditions and labels and things that we think that we should do, there's something very deep that happens where we move into the space of everything.
Yes, beautiful. In certain traditions, which have very powerful, noble practices of celibacy, circulation of one's sexual energy, not going into one's sexual energy, and in a way pulling back the ideals, the intention being that energy is somehow going to be sublimated, transformed into higher meaning, or replenish ourselves in some other way that fulfills us beyond our base desire to get off and such. Can you share about your experience and what you feel about all that?
Yeah, I have very much of a yes and with it. Very much of a, I feel like everyone's an individual in this game of sexuality. So I've had clients where not circulating energy does something biochemically and they get a lot of prolactin and then they feel depleted for days and their testosterone. So there's like a biochemical thing within that person's chemistry that creates a drop or if they aren't circulating the energy. So then we teach them to circulate the energy, which then changes the biochemistry. Whereas I have other people, when they do that, they don't feel good. They feel better when they're ejaculating a whole bunch throughout the day, like that, when they feel like they have a release that's happening. And so, and I think this is just in these decades of working with sexuality, it's like making any one way the way isn't the thing. It's finding your way. It's finding who you are and your path to sexual awakening. And for some people, that's being bound or playing with power dynamics and going into total surrender. And other people, it's about being in control. For some people, it's about circulating erotic energy through the body and then transmuting that for spiritual awakening and enlightenment. That was me at 19 years old. I went to my teachers. I was like, I want to become enlightened through sexual energy. And they laughed at me at the time, but I didn't know what I was talking about. But this idea of how do we utilize our sexual energy, I think it's about getting conscious so that we're now conscious of, well, what works best for me is this, and what works best for my partner is this. And then how do we reconcile both self and other in sexual experience to where we're dancing in this beautiful union of where we both find those places where we cross. If you ever seen the Venn diagrams, it's like, where are those places where we meet? And then beyond, like taking a step beyond that, it's actually integrating I have these 5 blueprint types. It's integrating that there actually isn't a big difference between our sexuality. Like one type might be more of a circulator, and let's do energetic play and eye gazing and breath work and tantra. And another person might like the darker edges of sexuality and playing with bondage or playing with power dynamic or playing with, I've seen everything. So there's nothing in my vocabulary that feels off limits, as long as it's consensual. And as long as everybody there is in a willing to want to game that they're playing together, we find those places where these things cross. And then using your work, Sachin, we're able to feel both pieces, which may seem like they're opposites, and then come into, oh my goodness, we're all actually one in our sexuality. There isn't a difference. There's only an appearance as if there's a difference.
Beautiful, Jaya. This is such an exciting field because it's the place that has been contracted, demonized, distorted, twisted the most. My wife and I being deeply involved in this whole world with you, and sharing about sexuality as a couple in our relationship over the years. We've come to, we came from very traditional roles, very traditional Hindu background myself. My wife came from a very traditional Catholic background herself. Her father is a deacon.
Wow.
His mother, so a very conservative type of family. And my family is very traditional. And we felt like in our era, wow, like, oh my, we're like, where are we going? But the power of sexuality, it's for us has been in a way the furnace that's kept our evolutionary drive alive. Share about that.
To me, pleasure is like fuel. And I'll often say, I don't really teach sexuality. That's just like the front door, right? The thing I'm actually teaching is aliveness. Yeah. It's life. If we think about it, we're all a product of sex.
Yes.
And by demonizing sexuality, we actually demonize our humanity. We've all come from this union of sperm and egg and this divine spark that happens at that moment. And then the replicate, this thing is magic that that we are here is a miracle.
Yeah.
It's an absolute, the chances of this whole thing coming together and being like, it's a miracle. And so to me, pleasure, sensuality, sexuality, it is the fuel of life. It's what creates life. It's the creative life force of our planet.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that we've demonized this thing that is the creative life force on our planet, and then look at like how we treat our planet.
Yes.
You know, how we treat each other.
Yes.
How we treat people who are in pleasure, and in the names, and, you know, just all of this stuff around sexuality. It's so curious to me.
We rally around people who are feeling down and upset, and for good reason. But those who are showing pleasure and ecstasy, sometimes we can be offended by, oh, look at them, they're too big or whatever, right? And isn't that really what we all want?
Yeah.
To be that? You know, why do you know, there's in these times, I've had many friends, many folks have, you know, reached out to me where their pressure of their relationship is in their face because of this unique time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's like the space, the time, the confronting of all that everyone has to confront in relationship, not just us, but as a society, world society. It's affecting sex lives right to the core. Sometimes people are saying, I'm having wild swings from like feeling the end of like, oh, everything, and then wanting to have intense sex, being really horny, being really alive. And then other times they're just crashing for days. And then all this. Can you share how you experienced that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, because I see, well, the main thing that I see is people are no longer willing to tolerate the stuff that they were tolerating because they were so busy before.
Yes.
And now that things have slowed down, they're like, oh, I can't tolerate that any, it's like a cat hair, like a little teeny hair. Like if you've ever had a splinter from a cactus, it's like,
Oh, yes.
it feels like that. Like there's this little splinter, and now you're very, very, very aware of all those splinters, and they're coming to the surface to be cleansed, to be purified, to be healed, to be. And so I'm seeing that where there's like, I can't tolerate this anymore, help. I'm seeing increase in drive. Like some people are like, we're having the best sex we've ever had. Like we're home and we're exploring and we're doing all of this. I see people who've left their relationships, like right before we went into quarantine, they hightailed it out, and like suddenly, so then there's like the fallout of all of that. And then I see people who have been in quarantine together and they've split up. Like these are the four main things that I'm seeing in relationship during these times. And I think it is, like you said, Sachin, heightened. Things are heightened right now. And I think it's a great opportunity, quite personally, because it's the opportunity to let go of the things that aren't serving us. It's the time to work with the patterns that are no longer working. And it's a time to recreate ourselves erotically and in relationship with other people. What do you really want? What do you really desire? What is it that wants to be born in your relationship? What is it that the two of you, in those of you who are in relationship, are wanting to create together? And what are you wanting to let go of? And then when there's all this stuff I'm seeing for singles, I'm seeing a lot of people turning to porn because they're lonely. And porn, you know, people worried about like how much I'm watching porn and how much am I partaking in these practices, and is that affecting me? And so there's a lot of guilt, shame around the compulsion to turn to pornography because there's no longer the outward connection that I see rising. There's people who are just feeling really touch deprived and alone, and it like hurts, you know, to not have touch and connection. And then there's people who are loving, like they're single and they're creating their own self-pleasure practices. They're connecting in a deeper way with their own body. To me, that's the opportunity here.
Yes.
How can I connect to my own body? How can I connect to my own pleasure? How can I create practices around my sexuality so that when this whole thing lifts, you are like an ecstatic, juicy, something walking out that is in touch with and understand your own eroticism and the places that it can take you, because sex isn't just sex. I think we all know this, but most people have only explored like teeny of what sexuality is and the possibilities of what can occur from exploring and going on this journey of sexual awakening.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Suzanne and I, we approach this time and we call this temple time for us, a tantric temple time. And by tantra, our simple way, one way of expressing it is it's starting from that we're not two working on becoming one, but that we're actually one learning to play the art of two artfully.
I love that so much because it twists it, right? We think we're two,
Yes.
becoming one into divine union. We think we're two, seeking each other and seeking sex in order to become one. But as soon as you're one, learning how to play two-ness,
it now becomes an erotic game. It becomes an artful exchange rather than a laborious act or some clinical, twist my head this way and, like sniff through my left nostril this way and twist my right elbow this way. And then like, contract my ass 16 times while I stick my tongue out my left ear. You know what I mean? Like, temple time for us first starts with, the ritual. And it's a ritual because we can have a full day like this. We can be in the full, parental role, full in the guidance role, whatever, in our own role, whatever. And then we take a few minutes and we say, we're going to let it go. We have a time for ourselves to get to reestablish ourselves without the identity in relationship with the other, any other, the world at large. What's myself prior and beyond all identity? We can do that through a little walk, a little breather, a little bike ride, I'll go, whatever, any spontaneous ritual, but in a ritual context. Now and on the special nights, we'll say, okay, now we're coming together in tantric union. We're going to put our little chess pieces of Satyan, the king of his world, Suzanne, the queen of her little domain on this chessboard we call life. And we're going to be the meta observer. We're going to be the divine space. We're going to be the union first in love. So we come to love and oneness by gazing, by breathing in a ritual way that's spontaneous. And then the Tantra arises spontaneously through our devotion to if the oneness is already where you've started from, then the only place now to go is ecstasy. So I just wanted to share that little ritual that we do,
I love that. I love that. I love, we call them toggles, the transitions from the world of, identity, work, mom, dad, all the things, husband, wife, all the things. And then how do you toggle into the realm of sensuality, sexuality, and the divinity of coming togetherness? Or in this case, playing two-ness. How are we playing two-ness as the divine masculine and the divine feminine, or, yin yang, whatever languaging you want to put around it. Shiva Shakti, in the tantric terms and traditions. So my partner and I, we have these little toggles. So that might be a hot bath, where we get into a hot bath together and we just download the day and get it all out, just going back and forth about the day, or it's taking a walk like you mentioned. So what are the things that you can do to, I think of the sexuality realm as a sacred realm that we're entering into, and this realm of so much play and so much pleasure. And I've come with my instrument tuned to this event. Like I often think of it like a pilot light too sometimes, like where's my pilot light at? Is it a lighthouse where it's shining and everything comes to it? Or is it just this little like flame and I'm watching it throughout the day? And when I come to my lover, I want my pilot light filled and my instrument tuned and like ready to play.
Yes.
And so I even start toggling before, like if I know we're going to be together, I start, maybe it's dance or maybe it's something to have my instrument tuned for the moment. And I've been in this practice since I was 19 years old of just what is erotically possible? What else can I experience? What other kind of orgasm can I go for? And it's not a chasing. I want to be careful because some people go into I'm not good enough, or I'm not having the kind of orgasm Jaya is, so therefore I'm less than, and then they start chasing or feeling like something's wrong with them. If there's any message that I want people to get around sexuality, it's that there's nothing wrong. You're not broken. You're normal. So many people think they're abnormal because a labia is longer than the other, or, something isn't quite what they think the norm should be. And so this piece of when I was 19, setting this mission of I want to find out everything that's erotically possible in this instrument. Because to me, this is an instrument I'm walking around in, and what can it do? I think about astronauts or Olympians when I think about this. Like some people have said, like, Jaya, you're like an erotic astronaut, like you're like the Olympic athlete. And I laugh because it's a good analogy in that I've just been so dedicated to pushing the bounds, pushing the containers of what people think is possible erotically, and finding out there's no limit. It's infinite what we can do in these bodies as erotic beings. It's infinite. I've never found a limit. And this is, 25 years or more of playing.
I'm curious, for all our friends who are listening and watching, is if there's any resistance that arises in you when you hear the capacity for our erotic potential, our erotic expansion capacity. Because I know certainly for me, there's times where I'm like, whoa, and then I hit that edge, and then now it's nothing, and then whoa, and then I hit that edge, and then we play in that edge, and now it's nothing. Now it becomes more, and now where it's like, oh, it's inclusive. As long as for us, the yogic principle of ahimsa may not do any harm, and even and to do things with truth, with truth, sattva, right? So to have it with truth, and so that it doesn't do any harm. These are universal principles I know you share quite in depth, when you train, for those of you who don't know, Jaya and her team, they train an incredible body of sexuality coaches. I'd love you to share a little bit about this so that people can understand really the power of how they can expand in these realms.
Mm-hmm. One of the goals I had around sexuality was to up-level consciousness. Because sexuality in our world has had such, I don't want to say lack of consciousness, it's more just, we don't know, ignorance maybe, ignorance around sexuality. And it's because we don't talk about it. We don't think, oh, I could go get a sex coach, or we get the coach for health, and we get the coach for our finances, we get the coach, life coach. But often I think sexuality is the final frontier in personal growth and development. Actually, right now, I think more and more people are seeing that this is an area where they've had ignorance, shadow, they've broken consent, they've caused harm in the past around sexuality. So we have a lot of shame and guilt in this area. And so one of my goals being, how do we up-level consciousness on this planet? And how do we have a world where those of us who have vulva bodies feel, we identify maybe with the feminine or cisgendered women, we feel that we can walk in the world freely expressed in our sexuality and won't be harmed. We feel safe. How could those of us who identify more with the masculine energy, or cisgendered men, or, cock body, like I'm walking around with this, feel that they can fully express and not be shamed for the expression of their desires and wants. Like I wanted to create this world, in a world where we no longer have rape, a world where I love the little song here. I can find pleasure in anything. It's so funny when I like tune in. It's like, oh, let's just change that into pleasure. Like, let's just make that pleasurable. A little song, but anyway, I was sharing about a world where we no longer have rape, where we no longer have like these pieces of our humanity that feel like they're taking, yes, because we're freely expressed sexually. And so the goal being to up-level consciousness to a place where that's the world. And I felt like, oh my goodness, when I first saw that this was like my why with this work was, I can't do that. I wanted to throw up. And that was the moment when I was like, we need to train coaches, because it's a bigger thing than me. It's way bigger.
Yes.
And so we started this to up level, and consent is a big piece. It's a big piece of the game in learning how to play oneness, playing two-ness. A big piece is the consent conversation.
You can't get, if you're feeling unsafe, it's hard to get to some metaphysical or spiritual oneness unless you're illusionary bypassing in some way or imagining it. But it's hard to get into true intimacy and oneness when you can't have trust.
To open and be in ecstasy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Unless there's a turn on, in some people's turn on is fear. Some people's turn on is lack of safety. So, you know, there's so many different flavors, but for the most part, for most people, getting to these states of unity consciousness, getting to a place where your body is so open, you don't even have a body anymore. You know, I get so into exploring those kinds of places where I've just disintegrated in everything, and I'm making love with the universe like that. But there needs to be a level of safety, trust with the person that I'm with to open that much to where I'm just in the ecstasy of the union with the universe. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah. It's so much fun. And, you know, in my years of doing this, I think the biggest thing that people bump up against is it's the piece of I shouldn't, I'm bad, I'm wrong. And it's the shame piece and the conditioning and the belief systems around sexuality. I believe, Sachin, you call them like decisions of defeat. I mean, I'm bumping up against in the work, bumping up against people who just have these decisions of good girl shouldn't. I'm a bad person because I did X. And so many times it's so mild. Like it's so like I get this little smile on my face when people start to reveal the things that they feel the shame for. And, you know, you would think it would be these really big atrocities. And it's these little minor, like my mom told me when I was 10 that if I had sex with more than 2 men, then I was a slut. Or, you know, I don't want to be that guy. I just hear all of these, it's like, I call it gobbledygook, the gobbledygook that's on top of the true essence that just, the more we peel it, the more we can get to that heart of ecstasy and unconditional love for everything and everyone, and these states of consciousness that I think most people don't even know are possible when it comes to our sexuality.
You know, it's beautiful about the whole path of this exploration, this dive. It's a dedication, and for Suzanne and I, it's a devotion, and I know it is for you as well. It's a profound devotion. I see it with you. I see how, you know, there's love in your family with your beautiful son, and you know, I've had the pleasure of seeing how you all interact with each other, and very, you know, you're walking the talk. You actually live truth. You express what's real. You're not suppressed. You deal with things from a spiritual perspective. You continuously start to take responsibility of yourself and find where those triggers are and what they mean to you. You've taken on this path, you know, of being responsible for your own personal energy. And I believe the freedom that we experience through deeper degrees, more expansive experiences, more wider, more wilder experiences of sexuality that are possible also comes with a responsibility. Now, the responsibility doesn't have to be heavy. That's what I used to think was the error years ago. Oh, heavy responsibility, heavy. No, responsibility can actually be erotic and joyful. Can you share about that?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts is the negotiation. Like I personally have so much turn on in the negotiation of, okay, well, what do we want to play with? What do we want to do? And I think that responsibility lies in communication. And because we have so much shame again, we don't communicate about sex. And so that communication of what are your boundaries tonight? I mean, just a simple container, if you set it up every time, what are the boundaries tonight? Okay, I'm honoring those boundaries. These are your boundaries, yes. What do you want me to do if you hit an edge tonight? You want me to stop and pause? Okay, I'll stop and pause, like repeating it so the person feels that safety. What is it that you would love to experience tonight? And then going into the playing with, well, here are all the possibilities of things that are in our crayon box that we can color with this evening or this morning or whatever time you want to play with. And then is there any expectation you have? Because I also want to get the expectations out, just because the expectations, if they're not spoken and they're unspoken expectations, then can get in the way of this being a great experience. So
Yes.
all of these, like just getting all of that out, I mean, that can take 15 minutes just to set a little container. And now you can blossom within that container. And now you've taken responsibility because you've spoken your pieces each way, both of you speaking your pieces both way. And then you become responsible for holding that container. And this, for some people, is the hardest part. There are some people whose turn on is breaking the rules. There are some people who want to push that container and they don't want to play. They don't want to play on the edges. And so as soon as you do that, though, now you create distrust. Now you've taken on, you've broken your responsibility in that container that you've created. And a lot of damage can be created in that place if you don't hold that container. But what's beautiful about it is if a container gets broken, the place where we build even more intimacy, not saying to break a container, but the place we build even more intimacy is actually in the cleanup after the container has been broken. How do you respond to, wait a minute, I said no to that? How do you respond when your partner says, wait a minute, that was a boundary? How you respond right then and there is everything. When you take responsibility and go, oops, not, oh God, I did it again, but oops, I did that. What do we need to do? Pausing, stopping. What do we need to do now to remedy that? What would feel good for you? I'm recommitting to holding that boundary in that moment. It's not excuses. It's not defensiveness. Responsibility is holding you, and it's also not collapsing. So it's holding and being there for the other person, whatever's coming up for them that arose with the boundary cross or the thing that you had said you were going to do that didn't get done, any of that, and holding that. And that recovery builds and deepens intimacy even more. It's like those pots that break and then they glue them with gold. It's like that. They're like even stronger and more valuable with those things. So a lot of people try to avoid making mistakes, which doesn't help them open fully. It's in the cleanup that we create that depth.
Beautiful. That's where the real magic and richness of relationship matures. That's where the bonds deepen, the hearts cleave. It's in the joy of picking each other up. Suzanne and I have had this way that we've worked together, lived together, where it's like, okay, we have no back door. Like there's no exit plan. There's no exit strategy in our subconscious mind. So at the very beginning stages of our intent to be an evolutionary force for each other and together, That was what I wanted to commit to. Anything less, I wasn't interested in the white picket fence and the whatever the traditional. And I'm sure many people, many of our friends, you know, they're here because there's some. We all intuit that relationship has capacity for endless depth,
Mm-hmm.
endless meaning, because we are recreating ourselves. We're eternal and the same forever, and we are eternally changing forever. It's not either or, it's the whole spectrum, from the stillness of being to the absolute wild buckings of being. And we get to play the whole spectrum. You know, there's also, in this time of temple time, when the energy is very charged in the air, sometimes tantrics would get together and they would do different rituals, practices, sexual magic practices. Some were for more for manifestation of gratifications, desires, and some were more for, if you will, union with the divine. Some were more, had more of expansive type energy. And some of the practices from that, which are very profound and ecstatic, is as the sexual heat is turning up and up, and as one or two or any partner combination is happening, as the orgasm is getting closer, if we're getting closer to orgasm, if those who are choosing to are feeling it and we're there, when the orgasm is happening, whoever it's happening for, then there's the feeling, the energy naturally is inward in the ecstasy and the pleasure, but the practice is to widen, to actually widen in the midst and keep going wider. See your like the ecstatic energy moving across your room, and then your whole home, and then your town, and then your city, and then your province, country, whatever, all, and then the world, and see how far you can feel in the midst of the most intense internal pleasure or bodily pleasure. So it's the combination of exploding internally inward and exploding consciousness outward. And in that moment, all those distinctions dissolve, and all that's left is the union of light and love and consciousness.
Mm.
And there we make prayers from there, just like prayers, like ecstatic prayers that pour forth. May all beings drink from this well of unreasonable happiness. May all beings that never know bodies, you know, have a moment of this, you know, like just ecstatic prayers for the all. So yeah.
So good. So good. Yeah, a couple of things on what you just said. One is about being 100% all in. I remember a time in Ian and I's relationship, I always had one foot out the door. In every relationship, there was always a part of me that was just like, maybe there's something better. Maybe there, and I think we do this in life. We're always looking for tomorrow being something being better, or the next hour something being better, instead of being right with what we have right here, right now. And holy frick, there's like ecstasy right here, right now, and what we have right here, right now.
Right there,
Right here,
now.
right now, right here, right now. You just said
Right now. Over there.
I'm so glad you popped in.
Ecstasy, Jaya, Jaya, ecstasy. What's an ecstasy?
So good.
Oh,
So beautiful one.
hello, beautiful one.
We were just talking about being all in with right here, with what you have right now. And I was sharing how Ian and how I always had one foot out the door, always looking for something better. You know, they're either in the past or the future. And I made this decision without telling Ian. I said, I'm going to be 100% all in my own head, 100% all in with what I have here now. And I didn't tell him. And then we were in Jamaica, Suzanne, we were in Jamaica on a pier, and there was a bed. It was a restaurant that served this. They had one bed on this pier, and they served us. It was like a little home, home restaurant. They served us out on the bed, and there was a lightning storm out in the ocean.
Oh.
And our relationship had just gone epic. And it is because I didn't tell him. I made this decision that I was 100% all in with whatever was in our relationship, and we're out there, and he's just talking about how epic our relationship had become and amazing our sex life was, and we're sharing this just like amazing moment. And I said, I have a secret I have to tell you. And I told him that earlier in the year I had made this decision. He goes, I've been feeling it every step of the way, that he didn't know what it was, but that something had shifted. And so he felt that I had been out, and then he felt that shift when I was all in with whatever was, no matter what, I was all in. So yeah. One of the things I tell a lot of people is just make the choice to be all in with what is here right now, because you have everything you want right here, right now. Oftentimes we don't realize that we have it all right here, right now in this moment.
You know, we have a saying that 99% or less is slow drip poison. And we can feel it. And that 1% chasm is all it takes for a thorn to fester and get infected and then get diseased and whatever, right? And grow and not be addressed.
Yeah.
That 100% is our total immunity. It's not immunity from our foibles. It's immunity from escaping the karmic gold mine of union that can happen through our challenges.
Mm-hmm. Because everyone's going to have challenges. And we think because we have a challenge that it's not the right relationship.
Right? It's like, it's got to be something else better out there somewhere that's not that.
Yep. But the truth is that your challenges create the beauty for the other stuff. It's not like just ecstasy all the time. And I think that that's another thing that people think is like, oh, when I have all this sexual awakening, or, oh, when I have spiritual enlightenment, that means that it's all bliss 24/7. And it's interesting because what arises can look like anger. What arises can be sadness, but there is a freedom, like a blissful freedom, but it's not what I thought it would be in terms of like everything's perfect all the time. You know, everything looks blissful and happy all the time. No, there's lots of flavors. I want all the crayons in the crayon box. But it's the shift in perception from that crayon is bad. That crayon means XYZ is not okay, and I need to change. And oh, there's a better crayon that I'll have tomorrow, as opposed to all the crayons. Let's play with all the crayons in the crayon box, and every crayon is awesome and delicious. If it's anger crayon or sadness crayon or doubt crayon or whatever crayon that you're playing with, they're all good crayons.
Yeah. Yeah. True that. True that. Yeah. I mean, I would agree.
And the other thing, Sachin, that you said about expanding, I remember being 19 and learning the golden ball meditation as part of the tantric rituals. And that's the one where you go out, like first you fill the room, then you fill the town, then you fill the state, the country, the continent, the world, and the galaxy, the universe, and you just keep going until there's nothing. It was always my favorite practice. I just loved it. And then the moment of orgasm, to be able to
Yes.
that.
Yes. Very potent.
I can feel it happening now.
It's totally happening.
Right now. That expansion is happening right now. When I look in your eyes, Jaya, that expansion is happening right now. Right now. In your eyes, it's the same. Yeah. That's all we've got, right?
And it feels to me like unconditional love. Like I can't even put words. Those are the best words I can put to it, but it's everything is accepted in it. So everything is loved.
I love when you say that, because that's who you are. That unconditional love. You speak of that I've heard you speak of that often, and from my experience, you don't speak about love, unconditional love. You speak from unconditional love. And that's the expansion that I feel when you speak and when you are that. So thank you.
Everywhere is the face of the beloved.
Yes.
It's just, you know, I look at you and I see this like the same. It's just love. Every one of us, like it's that's what we are. We are unconditional love playing, and we've just forgotten. And sex is the pathway to remembering that.
Mm.
And if we start from that place and then have sex, like you were suggesting, Sachin.
So, Jaya, you know, you shared about earlier the compatibilities and the challenges in compatibilities. You've created a very beautiful way that people can dial into that called the erotic blueprint. Would you be kind enough to share about that?
Sure. So there's 5 erotic blueprints. And if you're an energetic, you might have felt that expansion we all just went into. So energetics are turned on by space. Space, they love feeling the spaciousness, tease, longing, yearning, feeling that safety is so important to them. And they love like the things we've been talking about, the tantric aspects, the eye gaze, the breath work. These are things that the energetics can lean into their superpowers, which are having orgasmic experiences where they go into unity consciousness. They're having orgasms on multiple dimensions of our realities and playing in star fields. You know, I'm as I'm having an orgasm, I'm out floating and becoming nothing and everything in the universe. So this superpower of these expanded states. And then the shadow is there's so much sensitivity to an energetic. It's like somebody touches my arm and it's like they've now the whole universe just went and I feel it ripple through the whole, you know, everything in the cosmos. It's like just that is enough. And I could like stew on that for, you know, a couple of minutes before like another little touch comes in and I can actually see the energy. Like, so those are some of the things that energetics can play with, but that sensitivity can cause them to short circuit. If it's too much, too quick, too fast, it's too like there's space. If there's a lack of safety, a lack of trust, there's a foundation. Then the sensual is turned on by all of their senses being ignited. So that's the smells, the beauty, the flowers, the environment, the beauty of something. They bring the artistry to eroticism, the tastes, this closeness. So whereas an energetic loves all the space, like a sensual wants to like slow dance and have bodies skin to skin and yummy and oils and all of that. The shadow side of the sensual is that they can get really caught in their head because if the space isn't just right, it's like their brains are scanning for where is something off? Where can I make it more beautiful? Or, you know, I'm really stressed, so I'm not in the mood to have sex. A sensual really needs to relax first in order to move into the erotic realm. So those toggles we were talking about earlier are really great for sensuals. The sexual is someone who's turned on by what we think of as sex in our culture. So it's the penis and a vagina, you know, it's the orgasm, it's nudity, it's nakedness, it's penetration. So those are some of the things that the sexuals love. And they're usually 0 to 60, like quick turn on. And it has a simplicity to it. It's like, what? All sex is good. It's what's all this variety stuff? You know, like this is easy. It's point A, point B. And then the shadow side of that, though, is that they miss out on all the other crayons in the crayon box. And so they're playing like one note when there's a whole bunch of piano keys to play on. And sometimes they can't see the value in the other notes or in the journey to the orgasm as they're getting there. What's interesting about the sexuals is that they like the sensual needs to relax in order to have sex. The sexual really needs to have sex to relax. Like sex is the release. Sex is the, everything is right in my world again. Now I can go out and conquer stuff. So it has a flavor of that to it, where it's like, it brings them the relaxation that everything's good. It's like, it's all good. I've had that release. The kinky is someone who's turned on by the taboo. There are different types of kinky. So there's this more psychological based kinky where they like the power dynamic and the play of the psychology of the game. Then there's more of the, I saw a look and then there's the more sensation-based kinky, who is somebody who enjoys the different intense sensations that might be like a little sting of a little slap on the butt or a smack on the cheek, or it's the feeling of constriction or rope. So what are those different flavors that fall with an intense sensation? And there's some people like my partner, Ian, he's both. He's both the psychological and the sensation based, and he's mostly kinky. So like most of his eroticism falls into the kinky realm. Mine was zero. Kink wasn't even on this blueprint map because I was zero. My highest was sexual, and Ian's sexual was zero. So you can see we had like total opposites. And it really, like before the moment in Jamaica, before that time, we were really struggling in our sexuality and in our relationship because we couldn't figure out this piece. Like I couldn't figure out how to turn him on, even though I was the sex person with all the techniques and all the stuff, but I was blind to my own language that I couldn't speak. So I didn't have his language. He didn't have my language. And so we were always crossing each other in our sex life. Now we know, and now we've expanded into new territory. But the final one is the shapeshifter. And the shapeshifter is someone who speaks all of these languages. So the shapeshifter has all of the flavors. They have all the crayons in the crayon box that they're wanting to play with. The great beauty of this shapeshifter is that they have all the orgasmic capacity of all. It's unlimited. I mean, it's just this unlimited. I talked about discovering all that's erotically possible. It's like the shapeshifter has access to all of it. And then on the shadow side, they've been told oftentimes they're too much. They've been told that they are too complex. And they also shapeshift to please other people, because if they have all the crayons in the crayon box, they can color red or they can color green, depending on what their partner is. But then they're left starving because they're playing with one crayon in the crayon box and not all of the full capacity of what they are and what they need in order to feel satisfied in their eroticism. So a shapeshifter I've seen shapeshifters, it's 3 hours later and they've had 10 hands on their body and every flavor and sensation and strawberries and the whole shebang, tantric ritual. And I'm like, okay, give yet? Nope. Like they can just keep going and going and going and going and going. And some of us don't have that capacity yet, and I say yet, because I truly believe that in essence, we're all shapeshifters. It's, it's kind of like a new idea that's been forming as I've been watching people, because what ends up happening is as people go on this journey of understanding who they are and playing with the blueprints, when they come out the other side, they often come out as shapeshifters. Once they've peeled back the conditioning, once they've peeled back the layers, it's like, I'm an unlimited erotic being.
Where can our friends go so that they can do that quiz?
The quiz is at eroticbreakthrough.com, and I'm sure you can put a link in too, but eroticbreakthrough.com. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. We've done this.
Go check it out, people.
Yeah.
I tell you, just a testimony for me. I did the quiz and I was bawling my head off. I cried. I was like, oh, I'm being seen right now. What? I didn't even know. And I mean, we have been, Tantra teachers for
decades,
almost 3 decades now. And like you and Ian, I mean, there were things we did not know. I did not know. And so I highly recommend going and taking the quiz and diving deeper if it moves you, because it is well worth it.
And then what gets really fun is when you've learned your blueprint, you start expanding, you start playing in this. We often say the next steps are learning how to feed the blueprint, speak the blueprint so you know the words and the body language and the vocal tone. then heal the blueprint because of the shadow aspects of the blueprint. And then you expand into new blueprint territory. So if your partner has a different blueprint than yours, you're not doomed. Sometimes people go, we're different. But what gets really fun is when you play with some of Sachin's work, the accelerated evolution work, and you start to integrate the blueprints, you start to just expand even more into places that are beyond. If anything, our blueprints show us where we're limited and where we have room to grow into expansion and other possibilities.
It's been a deep pleasure working together. You know, our teams, friends, our teams, our organizations have joined, and we're collaborating and sharing with each other the richness of each other's experiences in coaching and guiding. And it's become such a beautiful collaboration of what I have learned, Suzanne has learned, what our team has learned, what your team and yourself and your life experience. And I believe that this is a time where those of us who have gifts for the greater whole are being called upon to offer each other the pinnacle of our expressions and to align around each other there, so that we all arise together.
With that, I'm gonna run. I've got a Facebook Live I'm going on. So soon.
Wow.
Great. Thanks for coming.
That was so fun.
I'm a lucky man. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that and your time and devotion. I'd love you to just, for all these warrior sages, our sweet beloved friends and close ones, what's in your heart to share to us regarding sex and now and this time and who we are as beings, as leaders?
The first thing that comes, I have to say, not what comes to mind, what comes to body. The first thing that comes to my body is that use sexuality as a tool for your own awakening, your own growth, your fast track. It's not the only track. There's many paths, but it can be one that is an accelerated path to your own awakening to who you are and to peeling back the layers of the conditioning and the programming at the deepest level, my view on this. And so use it as a tool. Don't allow sex to use you. And this is the consciousness that I think raises us into our hearts. And when we have the heart and the sex co-joined in union, to me, that's passion. That's our life force. That's our aliveness. And so bringing your heart into your sex, bringing your sex into your heart is fuel, like pleasure. It just brings in that pleasure, even more pleasure, even more pleasure. And so I leave you with, how can you make this moment even more pleasurable? How can you make this moment even more pleasurable, and not from a place of trying to make it better, but from a place of acceptance and love of yourself, of others, and of our humanity? Because to me, it's the ultimate expression of consciousness. The ultimate expression of consciousness is our sexuality co-joining us, bringing us together, merging, or I like Sachin's view, we begin merged and we're learning to play tuneness. And it's the ultimate expression of consciousness. I have a little joke that consciousness created all of this just so we could have sex. So enjoy it.
May all beings know the deepest of all pleasures, the deepest of all pleasures, the fullest of all pleasures. Thank you so much. I love you so much.
Thank you.
Give my love to the family.
Likewise.
Thanks, friends. Have a good night.